Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe Digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African-American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When We Believe Digital Podcast, go to Roku and download our app, and We Believe Global, with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. Good evening. And can you hear me? You getting a lot of feedback? Huh? Good evening, and welcome to Socrates Garrett Live. We're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, in the heart of the Deep South, Mississippi, my hometown. Now, I'm going to spend some time going through activities and events that have shaped my life and that have brought me to a point of new beginnings. And so I want you to stay with me for a while. Now we're going to talk about business and when did we begin to do business. So there's some major dates. 1973, I had a major transition in life. You see, in 1968, I graduated from Alcorn State University, and I began my work career. Now, Alcorn, a great university, prepared its students for real-world activities. And what I learned most about college was that it prepared you and gave you an organized mind. So I got some things I want to talk about, but I want to go to a commercial. And engineer, we're going to take a commercial break, and I'll be right back.
Are you dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur, but you're not sure where or how to start? At Entrepreneurs Academy 101, our online program will guide you step by step on how to start and grow your own business. We offer courses such as how to write a business plan, how to create a budget, and so much more. Our online training program is designed for you to learn at your own pace, and there's no set order to complete this program. Because our academy is online, you have the choice to learn with a group, with friends, or individually. Upon completion of the entire curriculum, you will receive a certificate of achievement to acknowledge that you have completed the training needed to become a successful entrepreneur. So enroll today to design the life that you love. Contact your entrepreneur coach, Brenda Myers, at 601-672-0695 or visit our website at www.entrepreneursacademy101.com for more information.
Good evening. I'm Socrates Garrett, and we're broadcasting live from right here in Jackson, Mississippi, the heart of the Deep South, right here in the African-American-owned broadcasting studio. We believe Digital.com, our own platform. And so it's critically important that in the African American community, we control the narrative. I look forward to receiving opportunities to show and advertise your products for goods and services and to move your brand along in this community. We're broadcasting live on Facebook. When we believe digital podcasts, go to Roku and download our app. And we believe global with shows like this to bring articulate, intelligent conversations and dialogue to our platform. So I'm here to continue sounding the alarm. This is how the South is going to rise again. And we're back. So, I was talking about some things that had occurred with me in some critical dates. And so, but the more I get into this, the more I realize that those dates that I wanted to begin with, which found me as a grown person that just recently graduated from Alcorn State University, those dates don't tell the complete picture. And so what we want to do then maybe is just to take our time. We got all the time in the world. One thing about owning a broadcast studio is that you're not limited to time, and we can stay on as long as we want to and try and get the message out that is meaningful. So let me just back up for a little minute, because I want to talk about how business people are created and the kinds of things that happen in life that were significant things as you look back versus as the things that you can plan ahead. And so I'll just go back and say that I had tremendous influence as a kid. Strong African American role models. And my father was probably the gentlest, kindest man in the world. And he worked extremely hard all of the time. But I went to live with my aunt in St. Louis, Aunt Alice and David King. And so David was a different kind of person. He believed in controlling his environment, and he was, more into business from a street perspective than I would have gotten introduced to in the country in Farm Haven, Mississippi, because now I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and things are different. And so I was a small guy, and so my nephew, Othello, would often jump on me and beat me up. Well, one day my Uncle David came in and he saw that Othello was beating me up, and so he stopped the fight and he took me into another room in the house, and he said, if you let Othello whip you again, I am going to break your neck. Now, that was difficult for me in that I didn't want my neck to be broken, so I knew then that I had to do something with Othello. I wasn't a very brave young man, and so I had to find this courage from somewhere. I recall that one evening in St. Louis, I was standing in the kitchen, and St. Louis was notorious for these large rats. And so somehow a rat ran through the kitchen. I jumped up on the table and said called out at the top of my lungs, Uncle David, Uncle David, Uncle David, there's a bear in here. Because as a 4 or 5-year-old boy, in a traumatic experience, everything is larger than life. There are larger than life events. And this was one of them. I said, there is a bear in here. So he came in and grabbed me off the table and told me that, you just can't be afraid of things. You can't let people whip you, and you just can't be afraid. And he took me outside and introduced me to his philosophy of manhood. And so I learned from him then that you gotta be tough. You gotta be hard. You gotta have fight in you and no quit. And so after that, they told me as we were going to elementary school, I started school 5 years old at Booker T. Washington in St. Louis, I was told that I better not let anything happen to my sister, who was also in St. Louis with me. My mother already had 6 children, so she let 2 of them be loaned out. And so it became apparent that I had to move from being afraid of everything to the protector, one that would take the bullet for my sister. And so I got in a lot of fights. And I won a lot of fights. And so I learned then that I could be hard, I could be tough. And so after a while, a couple of years in that environment, and I came home one summer and I realized that I had other sisters and brothers, and I told my father and mother that I didn't want to go back to St. Louis. I wanted to stay here in Mississippi with my brothers and sisters. Now, that was a major decision. The decision to stay in Mississippi versus being brought up in St. Louis at the age of 5 was a decision that I made. Now, let me tell you, that decision has had great impact on who I am and what I will accomplish than any decision that I had made. Is one of the top decisions that I've ever made in life. To not be brought up in St. Louis, but to be brought up in the country in Mississippi. So my value system was completely different from the one that I would have had I stayed there with my Uncle David. But I learned some things in Mississippi, but I would fight. I would fight a lot. And so when I started school in Mississippi, still small in stature, everybody wondered when I was going to grow. My brothers and sisters were, my oldest brother was 6'7", my next brother was 6'2", and so on and so on and so on. And so, but I just didn't grow. And so I had a heart that was bigger than theirs, and I had the courage that was greater than theirs, but I didn't have the body, the man mass to carry out the positions that my brain would put me in. So those were some interesting dilemmas. But at 6 years old and 7 years old and 8 years old, boys are about the same size. And so I would just whip them all. I just couldn't wait to get to school to jump on somebody. Well, one summer, I guess about after the 3rd grade, when we came back to school, everybody was much bigger than me. They had grown over the summer, and I did not grow, and they were bigger than me. And so when I attempt to continue my dominance by whipping them, that didn't work out too well. And so I had to learn another art. I still needed to be in charge, but I couldn't do it with strength. So now I have to learn how to be in charge with my mind, with my brain. And so I learned the art of persuasion and the art of negotiations and those things. And I learned the value of a posse in realizing that I didn't have to be the lead person in the fight. I just had to be in charge of when the fight was going to begin, and that I could stand back. So I was learning and growing though, developing. You see, one of the great things that we don't spend enough time on is developing our children. Well, that's because they're so busy and so tied up into providing for the family until there is little time for nurturing and development. Now, I understand the importance of that now versus then, because then I wasn't being nurtured, and I don't understand nurturing. And so things began to grow, and life was hard, but it was fair. I would take all of the challenges regardless. We once had a mule that just nobody could ever ride. And at about 10 years old, I decided that I was going to ride this mule, whether or not it hurt me or not. But I could not have an animal that would not allow me to ride him. So I made the courage that day to jump on his back. And the strange thing occurred. He bucked and he jumped and he ran and he did all of those things that an animal would do to try to get you off his back, but I was still there. And after a while, he stopped, and I was able to ride him to the house. Well, when my brother saw me riding the mule to the house, he ran into the house and told my siblings and my mother that he had rode the mule that nobody could ride. It broke my heart because he stole my glory. He took it away from me. And that moment stays with me, that people will steal your glory. And it hurts. It hurt then as a 9-year-old, and it would hurts today as a 77-year-old. And so you have to be protective of your accomplishments and your achievements, and you can't share it with everybody because they will, in fact, steal your glory. You see it every day. Your ideas, you see others take your ideas. You see it in plagiarism. You see it in all walks of life. And so people have become very close-lipped, and rightfully so, about those things that mean a lot to them. They just don't share that. So I'm talking about these things because we're talking about how the development and the making of a business person. And so you have to have something in you that makes you take the risks associated with entrepreneurship. You have to have two things in you. You have to have a strong constitution. You have to be persistent. You cannot quit regardless. That's got to be part of your DNA. And you have to have motivation and a need, whether it's for recognition by others or whether it's for self-aggrandizement or whatever it's for. You have to have that identified, that thing called ambition. Ambition can be a terrible thing. It'll drive you beyond where you want to be. Because I remember when I said to my mother when I first went into business, I said, I'm going to do this thing whether it kills me or not. And that was to build something with my hands and my mind, because that I had nothing else to work with. But I had that kind of commitment and that kind of philosophy. And so there are times and there are decisions that you make that are going to determine where you're going to go in life. So, one of those next key dates with me would be, as a boy in 1959. We had experienced the murder of Emmett Till and had cousins that were brutally murdered on the Natchez Trace Highway. I had uncles that had their hands shot off and their eyes shot out. I've seen a lot of devastating things in Mississippi in 1946 up to 1959. I had seen some things that would leave permanent scars and would cause you to have low self-esteem when you have to walk down this road and bow your head and you couldn't look a man in the eyes and you couldn't do any of that stuff. It's hard. And so in order to overcome that and have enough self-esteem to be able to take failure and keep going and experience failure and keep going, you can't have been beat down. If you have been beat down, it's hard to be optimistic about things. And so I bring this up because people were being beat down in the part of the country that I came from. So my mother realized that, and she realized that her boys were pretty aggressive and outgoing and were not likely to survive in Madison County in the 50s and 60s. So she moved all of her boys down to Pineywood School. Now, Pineywood School was a boarding school, and many folk thought that it was a school that you send troubled kids to, kids that had disciplinary problems, because we did have an influx of students that came from Oakley Training School. down to Piney Woods. But we didn't get there because of disciplinarian problems. We got there because my mother was trying to keep us alive. She had refused to leave Mississippi because her mother was in Mississippi and her parents was there, and all her siblings left Mississippi, so she wasn't going to leave her parents, so she didn't move, but then she wanted to keep her children alive. And so she sent us down to Piney Woods. Now here I am, I'm running from white supremacy, and I'm running from all of the bigotry and the hatred that was being bestowed upon black people during that time, to a school in, believe this now, Rankin County. Now, Farm Haven in Madison County with Billy Noble was sheriff. The sheriff ran the Ku Klux Klan, and the sheriff was the closest thing to a king or God that you ever wanted to see. And the sheriffs in Rankin County were more notorious than the ones in Madison County. And Simpson County, everybody remembers the term Goon Jones down in Simpson County, just notorious sheriffs. With no Mayberry in the areas that I came along with, Andy Griffin, all that's garbage. White folk did whatever they wanted to do with whomever they wanted to do with it, and there was nothing, absolutely nothing can be done about it. And so, during that same period of time is when we had all of these horrendous crimes against mankind. It's just, and I don't want to get into that. But anyway, so I'm down here at Piney Woods School, and I look up now, and for the first time, I have white instructors. I have teachers now that were of the Caucasian perspective. And it took me a while to take that in, to say, now, what do we have here now? Am I going to be educated? Am I going to have to be submissive now? Because one thing about being in the country, it was all black. The principals was black, the teachers was black, it was all black experience. We didn't see white folk. So I get out here now, I now have to recognize the authority of white folk. It takes a little doing when you are coming from an environment where your life objective is to either escape the environment you're in or to revenge for the things that occurred in that environment. So it was tough. Now, what I learned though confused me, because now I have white folk that are pouring into me and telling me that I, in fact, could be a greater person than I ever imagined for myself. You see, as a boy in a country, there were two things that you saw. Well, there were three. There were three things that you could be in that period of time that I came out of. One, you could be a truck driver. Two, you could be a farmer. Three, you could be a teacher. Now, that was it. There was no lawyers, There was no lawyer in the community. There was no doctor in the community. There was no engineers in the community. There was nothing there but those three things. And as a boy, that's all you see. So you got to grow up knowing that you're going to be one of those things. So I dreamed of being a truck driver, traveling on highways and getting the heck out of Mississippi and seeing the world through the windshields of an 18-wheeler. That's what I had hoped to be. But when I got to Piney Woods, they began to introduce the concepts of doctors, psychiatrists, and engineers, and all kinds of opportunities and things that I would have never thought about. And so they began to pour into me, and I received that, and now I became, in many ways, I find myself being nurtured, and I'm now believing that the world is a better place than the one that I had seen. I'm now filled with hope and aspiration that I can be somebody other than those three things. And so I stayed at Piney Woods from 59 from 61 to 64, 65. And my parents didn't have money for me to pay tuition, so they allowed me to work all summer for my tuition in the fall. So I never got back home from age of 16 I never got back to the house. And I never got back there, including today. And so I lived on that campus, and I lived with white folk, and I worked with them, and they taught me, and they invested into me, and they poured into me, and I left there full of hope, pride, and aspiration, different than what I would have gotten had I remained in an all-black environment. Now, I left there, and I went into Alcorn State University. Now, Alcorn was a different kind of university. First of all, it was more like a camp. It was more like a enclosed environment. It protected you from the rest of the world. So here I am once again, I'm being sheltered from the rest of the world. I didn't see anybody at Alcorn State University. It was all black too. And I was able to grow and develop in a safe environment. When I left Alcorn, especially when I come up to Jackson State University, Jackson State College during that time, it was different because they had the dollhouse, and they had theaters, and they had hotels, and they had all kinds of things you could get into that would take you away from your mission. And so we didn't have that at Alcorn. We learned to enjoy one another. We learned to bond, and we learned to know everybody on the campus. And so I got a great education there. But what I learned was that they didn't teach me anything specifically. And this is critical. They didn't teach me how to build a house, or how to build a car, or how to farm, how to teach. They didn't teach me that. Now, they might have taught some people some individualized specific things, but that's not what they taught me. They taught me how to organize my mind, how to organize my mind. And if you can organize your mind, you can take on any discipline that you encounter. So everything works off of a specific blueprint. And so I got a great start there. Now, my engineer is telling me that we have other shows that have to come on. But I want to continue this line of conversation because I really want to get into how do we make a business person, and I really want to get into what you have to overcome, what obstacles that will be put in your path. You know, the generation before me were removing obstacles from your path. The generation after me was putting obstacles in your path. And we'll get into that. It's a different scenario. But I want you guys to join me tomorrow as we come back and continue our series on how do you develop and grow a business person. Until then, I want you to stay safe and good day.